War, famously the mother of all invention, has spurred countless technological marvels. From radar systems to jet propulsion, many of today's ubiquitous technologies trace their roots back to the bloody demands of the battlefield. Yet for every groundbreaking invention, there are a slew of others that, while brimming with audacity, never quite made the transition from blueprint to battlefield. And supplementary to this is a whole subcategory of failures that, while no doubt molded by what were at the time sound theories and ideas, are so outrageous and bizarre that they can't help but look just a bit odd to our modern eyes. Today, those inventions. Our first weird military failure today is Project Hab Hook, a British attempt to produce a mammoth floating and virtually unsinkable aircraft carrier made of ice. This audacious World War II plan to turn icebergs into floating fortresses reads more like science fiction than military history, and yet it was a project that reached the highest echelons of the British war effort. The project had its roots early in the war, when German U-boats were proving to be a nightmare for the Allies, decimating supply routes in the Atlantic. Conventional materials for shipbuilding, such as steel and aluminium, were in dire shortage. It was in this challenging scenario that Geoffrey Pike, an inventor from the British Combined Operations Headquarters, proposed a solution audacious enough to capture the attention of the British top brass, harnessing cheap, strong, and abundant ice to build a giant, unsinkable aircraft carrier. Using ice as a construction material was initially dismissed, considered by many of Pike's associates to be, well, little more than a joke, and frankly, it's hard to begrudge them for that. After all, ice is brittle, it melts relatively quickly, and it was pretty unstable on the high seas with a bit of a tendency to roll over. However, Pike wasn't one to be easily deterred. He envisioned an enormous ship over a mile long with an aircraft landing platform on top and a void running its length below to shelter aircraft, and, well, damn it, Pike was going to do all he could to bring this vision to life. But fortunately, while Pike's vision was met with near universal eye-rolling, his reputation as a genius in the Combined Operations Commands lent credibility to his vision and afforded him the opportunity to at least have a bit of a go at it. More fortunately still, he had a breakthrough in the form of pykrete, a material he invented, hence the name, that was a blend of wood pulp and frozen water. This material fortified the ice, compensating for its inherent structural weakness in a manner similar to how steel reinforces concrete. This newfound material was buoyant, melted slowly, and could be machined and cast. Max Perutz, a molecular biologist, was instrumental in refining pykrete, conducting covert tests in the heart of London. Upon being introduced to a block of pykrete by Lord Mountbatten, Churchill was reportedly so impressed that he gave the go-ahead for a prototype. Today's video is brought to you by one of my slightly more unusual sponsors, and that would be Foreo. They're a beauty company that decided to sponsor educational creator me for some reason. But look, skincare is important. And Fact Boy here, looking younger every day, looking more like a fact boy rather than a fact man, thanks to Foreo. Look, I've told you about the bear before. That's this. But today, I want to talk to you about the Luna 4. This is a fantastic 2-in-1 smart facial cleaning and firming device. With Luna 4, you can enjoy an easy skincare routine tailored perfectly to your needs. It offers personalized cleansing, app-guided firming massages, and relaxing T-sonic pulsations. And here's the kicker. It's incredibly hygienic with ultra-hygienic silicone touch points that are 35 times more hygienic than brushes with nylon bristles. And look, I swear, I'm not becoming a beauty YouTuber, but I have. I've had spots and not so nice skin from using like nasty brushes and cloths. I've been using Luna 4 regularly, and my skin, it looks better. Feels smoother, it's firmer, it's more radiant, it's less old man and more fact boy. Also, perfect gift for your significant other. I got my wife one of these, and yeah, nice little gift there, isn't it? Right now, you can get 21% off a Luna 4, but that's for the first 100 people only. So, if you want to treat yourself or surprise someone special, don't miss out on this offer. There is a link in the description below. According to Mountbatten, in a now famous anecdote, he even demonstrated pykrete's buoyancy to Churchill by dropping it into the Prime Minister's bathtub. Named Project Hab Hook after a Hebrew Bible passage hinting at unbelievable wonders, the project's ambition was boundless. By 1943, a small prototype was in the works to practically test Pike's concept, being constructed in Canada on Patricia Lake in Alberta. The envisioned full-scale vessel was to require hundreds of thousands of tons of wood pulp, steel, and insulation. However, despite a promising start, the project soon encountered a major challenge in the form of cold flows, the deformation of ice, which increased the demand for steel and insulation in construction, pushing the projected weight of the full-size ship up to a whopping 2.2 million tons, and in turn demanded numerous more electric motors for propulsion, adding yet more weight. Despite its sort of early promise, the winds of war soon shifted, rendering Project Hab Hook less feasible. Increasing demands for steel elsewhere, the development of new airfields, and the introduction of longer-range fuel tanks for aircraft diminished the project's value, and with a price tag of 10 million British pounds, it was seen as an unjustifiable gamble. And so, given these issues, the project was gradually shelved over late 1943 and early 44. Though it never saw action, the project serves as a testament to the lengths nations will go to in times of war and the incredible power of human ingenuity in times of crisis. A quirky footnote in military history reminding us of the weird, wonderful, and often unrealized inventions birthed in the crucible of conflict. The history of military invention is nothing if not a relentless quest for an upper hand on the battlefield, one that has led armies to experiment, sometimes with modest and grounded ambitions, and other times with notions that seem to challenge the very boundaries of practicality. One such invention, conceived before and during World War II, stands out not for its success, but for its sheer audacity, and that of course is the concept of the flying tank. This audacious experiment aimed to combine the terrestrial prowess of tanks with airborne versatility, and it's come to represent the extremes of wartime creativity, a weird military invention that quite literally never took off. The 1930s and 40s were transformative years for military technology. New paratrooper units promised a revolutionary edge, the ability to bypass ground defenses and deploy directly into enemy territory. While soldiers could be parachuted, the heavy machinery that often decided the outcome of battles remained earthbound. The solution then was clear, if not audacious. The tanks must take to the skies as well, but how? In the frosty corridors of remote engineering centers, the Soviet answer began to take shape in the form of the Anatov A-40 Krylia tank, or tank wings. As you can see from this picture, despite hailing from the legendary Antonov Aircraft Company, it was really not an aircraft in the traditional sense. Instead, it was a T-60 light tank adorned with an impressive set of biplane wings and a twin tail. The ambitious vision was for this tank to be towed aloft, released mid-air, and then glide serenely onto the battlefield, ready for combat once its wings were discarded. However, theory and practice collided with dramatic consequences here, as during its maiden voyage in 1942, the tank's overwhelming drag nearly caused the towing aircraft, a TB-3 bomber, to crash. Though the tank glided smoothly thereafter, the glaring technological limitations became evident, and thus the Soviets shelved their dream of a flying tank, deeming it too ambitious for the technology of the day. But the Soviets were not the only nation to attempt to give tanks the gift of flight, as across the channel, the British had their own spin on the concept in the form of the Baines Bat. A brainchild of legendary aeronautical engineer Leslie Baines, the Bat was not a flying tank in the strictest sense, but rather it was an initial exploration of the idea, a potential design that might, in the future, be bolted to a tank to carry it into the sky. Differing from the Soviets, Baines proposed a broad, singular, swept wing. Back in 1943, it showcased potential, especially during the test flights helmed by Flight Lieutenant Robert Kronfeld. Yet, even with its successes, the project faced insurmountable hurdles. Logistical issues, such as the challenge of retrieving these vast gliders from combat zones, combined with a lack of compatible tanks, meant that the Baines Bat, like its Soviet counterpart, remained grounded in practical military planning. Now, it's worth noting that while flying tanks may have proved to be a technological dead end, some success was had throughout the war in deploying tanks via traditional gliders. The British developed the General Aircraft Hamilcar glider, which was used to transport many Allied light tanks into battle, such as their own Tetrarch and the American M22 Locust. While these gliders didn't bring full-size tanks onto the battlefield, they did at least show that maybe the concept of a flying tank wasn't completely insane. Ultimately, the story of the flying tank, both the Soviet and the British versions, provides a fascinating insight into the lengths nations would go to during wartime, seeking every possible advantage. Now, Our next weird military invention is the so-called gay bomb, a non-lethal psychochemical weapon that became the stuff of law amidst defense circles and later the public not too long after. It was the mid-1990s, the post-Cold War era, yet tensions still bubbled under the geopolitical surface all over the world. Therefore, the US Air Force, always on the lookout for avant-garde solutions to complex problems, entertained an unconventional concept. Could one influence or disrupt enemy combatants not through bullets or bombs, but through manipulating their emotions and sexual attractions? This wasn't a plot out of a science fiction novel, but a serious line of inquiry pursued by the Wright Laboratory in Ohio. The underlying idea was both simple and audacious. Instead of targeting an enemy's physical capabilities, why not target their psychological state? By dispersing sex pheromones over enemy forces, it was hypothesized that the soldiers would become mutually attracted to each other, causing disarray, distraction, and ultimately diminishing their combat effectiveness. As outlandish as it may sound, the proposition stemmed from an earnest effort to identify non-lethal methods of engagement. These methods, which run the gamut from surreal to humorous, sought to incapacitate or disorientate the opposition without causing direct harm. Thus, the gay bomb was conceived. However, as one delves deeper into the details, the project reveals less about military ingenuity and more about the limited understanding and misconceptions surrounding human sexuality at the time. The assumption that exposure to a certain chemical could rapidly alter an individual's sexual orientation or behavior is a testament to the then prevailing notions and biases. The documents that describe this concept, released years later under a Freedom of Information Act request, spawned both shock and disbelief. While some in the defense community might have seen potential in the idea, many scientists and experts in human sexuality raised eyebrows. Despite the vast body of research on pheromones and their influence in the animal kingdom, there has been no solid evidence suggesting such rapid behavioral changes in humans due to these chemicals. Furthermore, the idea of converting someone's sexuality through an aerosol spray, as some critics pointed out, seemed just a bit ludicrous.
You're gay.
These documents became public in 2000, causing quite the stir, especially as they detailed how millions of dollars had been spent on the ridiculous weapons development. The disclosure did more than just raise eyebrows. It sparked debates on the ethical implications of such a weapon, the underlying biases that it revealed about sexuality, and the broader question of where the line should be drawn when it comes to military research. In a twist that highlights the frankly bizarre nature of this story, the gay bomb concept even won the Ig Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. This parody of the prestigious Nobel Prizes is awarded for achievements that first make people laugh and then make them think. The award, delivered at a tongue-in-cheek ceremony at Harvard University, was perhaps the perfect closing number to this strange chapter in military research. During World War II, a conflict punctuated by both technological advancements and desperate measures, one of the most unconventional and frankly weird strategies to emerge was the Soviet Union's use of anti-tank dogs. As the name suggests, these were canines trained to target enemy tanks equipped with explosives meant to incapacitate the metallic beasts of war. On paper, the strategy appeared innovative and perhaps even effective against the German panzer divisions that had so far ravaged much of Eastern Europe. Yet, in practice, this curious military gambit proved to be fraught with complications, controversy, and moral dilemmas. To contextualize the rise of this peculiar strategy, one must consider the situation of the Soviet Union in the early stages of the war. With German forces advancing rapidly into Soviet territories and displaying significant tank superiority, the Soviets were grappling for solutions to stall or repel this armored onslaught. The Soviet military hierarchy, in a moment of desperate innovation, approved the training of dogs to approach and place explosives near or under enemy tanks. The training regimen for these dogs was rigorous and, to many, morally questionable. Initially, the dogs were trained to release a timer-detonated bomb near the tank and then retreat. This method, however, proved challenging for the dogs to master, so consequently, the strategy was modified, simplifying the dogs' task to simply locating any enemy tank. The canines were kept hungry, and their food was placed under stationary tanks. Gradually, the training evolved to include tanks with running engines, gunshots, and other war-related noises to simulate battlefield conditions. However, the cruel twist in this strategy was the fate of the dogs themselves. Rather than having them release the bombs and retreat as had been originally planned, the final approach was far more fatal. Explosives were strapped to the dogs, set to detonate upon impact, sealing the dogs' tragic fate in the process. But did this unconventional strategy yield any results on the battlefield? According to Soviet sources, as many as 300 German tanks were incapacitated by these anti-tank dogs. Such figures, however, have been subject to scrutiny and a fair amount of skepticism. Many Russian historians argue that these numbers were inflated for propaganda purposes, aiming to justify the dog training programs as moral and ethical implications. While the overarching efficacy of this strategy remains debated, there is clear evidence for some localized successes. In the heat of the battle near Kharkiv, for example, 6 dogs managed to disable 5 German tanks. Also, Stalingrad's airport, a critical battleground, saw 13 tanks neutralized by this method. Finally, during the Battle of Kursk, a pivotal confrontation on the Eastern Front, 16 dogs disabled 12 German tanks, suggesting that, in specific scenarios at least, the method had its merit. Yet the broader impact of anti-tank dogs remains murky. The relatively few tanks incapacitated by dogs pale in comparison to the vast numbers destroyed by artillery, infantry, or other conventional methods. Additionally, the psychological repercussions on Soviet troops who witnessed these animals' tragic fates was profound. These dogs, often viewed as loyal companions, were now sacrificed in a grim theater of war. Also, the Germans were quick to identify this emerging threat and promptly instructed their soldiers to shoot any dogs on sight, further undermining the effectiveness of the Soviet strategy. So, in the vast cache of weaponry designed over the years, there is a particular category reserved for the unusual, the fascinating, and the truly bizarre. Among these is the corner shot, a unique invention that on paper seems like a perfect solution to the age-old combat problem: how to engage a target without exposing oneself to danger. Its origin, use, and reception in the military would offer a compelling story of innovation, adoption, and skepticism. The corner shot was birthed from the creative mind of Israeli Defense Force Lieutenant Colonel Amos Goren. At its core, it isn't a weapon, but more of a sophisticated weapon mounting system. Imagine a rifle-sized frame with a hinging position at the front, and you've got the rough idea. Within this hinge, a weapon, usually a handgun, is clamped securely. This design allows the weapon to be pivoted to either side, enabling it to be aimed around corners. The real genius, however, lies in its integrated camera system. Mounted just past the hinge, this camera feeds real-time footage to a small screen in the operator's line of sight. Thus, a soldier or police officer can aim and fire at threats while remaining safely behind cover, with crosshairs on the camera feed aiding in their aiming precision. Since its inception in 2003, it has promised a revolutionary approach to urban warfare, providing an edge in situations where direct engagement was risky. However, despite its innovative design, the corner shot isn't a ubiquitous sight in military arsenals around the world, and it's actually a bit of a sales disappointment. So, who actually uses this particular device? Well, its most significant adopters have been specific units within police forces and some specialized military units. These units primarily operate in dense urban environments where the challenges of blind corners and potential ambushes are more prevalent. Some countries, those with extensive histories of urban skirmishes, including Israel, have found particular use for such a device, but even among them, the corner shot is a rare and niche beast that is only ever issued on a sporadic basis. There are good reasons for the disappointing sales too, as there are some inherent drawbacks to its design and functionality that have hindered its widespread adoption. For one, despite its rifle-sized frame, it doesn't offer the ballistic capabilities of a dedicated rifle. This limitation means that in situations where firepower and range are needed, the corner shot falls short. Additionally, the challenge of aiming through a small camera screen, especially under the pressure of combat, is a hurdle that can't be easily overcome. The disconnect between operator and weapon, mediated through a screen, complicates target identification and engagement accuracy. Furthermore, tactics developed over 2 decades of urban warfare, combined with the advent of compact drones and other reconnaissance tools, have rendered the corner shot less essential than initially thought. That's not to say it's entirely obsolete, though. Its value as a niche tool in specific scenarios, especially ones requiring stealth observation without direct exposure, keeps it relevant in particular contexts. Furthermore, the ability to adapt the corner shot with a range of weapons from various handguns to even 40mm launchers offers versatility that few weapon systems can boast. This adaptability means that while it might not be the first tool grabbed in a combat situation, it remains an option for those unique circumstances where its advantages shine. These slight silver linings to the corner shot's clout, however, don't change the fact that ultimately it's a weird military invention that just never took off.